got this. We're going to try this again. Give us a thumbs up in the chat if you are hearing me. Give us a thumbs up in the chat if you are hearing me. And while you're trying to do that, I'm going to actually ask our participants to join us on stage. That is millinery and costume designer Carolyn Adams, model and business owner Tuesday P. Brooks, fashion show designer Cedric Jose Washington, and moderator and curator of tonight's event, as well as the pop-up exhibition, Solio. Now, my name is Novella Ford, and I'm the Associate Director of Public Programs and Exhibitions here at the Schomburg Center. And while we could not have you here inside our Langston Hughes Auditorium, we do believe that this is hallowed space, and we are so pleased that we get to stream tonight's program live from the Schomburg Center. Tonight's conversation, Showing Out Fashion in Harlem, will take us behind the scenes and into the archives of the Harlem Institute of Fashion, an educational institute that offered free courses to students interested in dressmaking, millinery, and tailoring, as well as the Black Fashion Museum, both founded by Lois K. Alexander Lane. Her daughter, Joyce Bailey, wrote that her mother set out to dispel the myth that Blacks were newfound talent in the fashion industry. This remains a familiar myth that contemporary organizations like Harlem Fashion Row continue to debunk, while amplifying talent from across all sectors of the industry, from designers and models to producers and makers. Accompanying to tonight's conversation is a pop-up exhibition curated by Solio on view at the Schomburg Center through September 16th that pays tribute to the Harlem Institute of Fashion's legendary fashion shows produced for Harlem Week from 1979 to 1996. Please visit the Schomburg Center to see archival images, videos, costumes, and a specially commissioned new media piece by multidisciplinary artist Diane Smith. The exhibition will make you nostalgic for 80s and 90s and entice you to show out in your favorite fashion just because. While there are many updates to share with you, I want to bring out our latest and newest director, Joy Bivens, who took the helm of the Schomburg Center in June of this year. Prior to joining the Schomburg Center, she served as the chief curator of the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. She was also the director of curatorial affairs at the Chicago History Museum. Joy Bivens is the first woman to lead the Schomburg Center since Jean Blackwell Hudson's tenure ended in 1980. Please give her virtual applause, and then we will hear from our fantastic panel.
Thank you, Novella. It brings me great pleasure to greet you this evening, right before this festive and much-needed program begins. The Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture is about the business of documenting the diverse histories and cultures of people of African descent. Our vast collections reflect the thoughts, hopes, and struggles of people throughout the African diaspora. In doing this work, we endeavor to not just show struggle and survival, but the ways in which people of African descent have excelled, thrived, and used all manner of expression to signify our beauty, signify our existence. No doubt fashion and textile arts has been among those expressions. Designing and making garments is a rich part of our collective history, as is the art of making those garments come alive by not just wearing them, but embodying them and using one's own signature style to co-create with the maker. Tonight's program celebrates just that through the recollections and reflections of those who were part of the legendary fashion shows produced by the Harlem Institute of Fashion. While we can't be here together just yet in the Langston Hughes Auditorium, I have no doubt that you will be able to feel the energy on this live stream. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you in advance to our guests for allowing us a glimpse into the world of high fashion. Now, let's get this conversation started. Take it away, Solio.
Thank you. How is everyone in the virtual world? How are you all on stage?
Great.
Thank you so much for bearing with us through the technical challenges, but shout out to the Schomburg team for pulling it through. So I think we should just jump right into it, you know? I want to, wait, sorry, is my flow okay?
All right.
Okay, is it right? Shout out Mickey the Jones. Let's jump right into it. So 1966 is when Lois K. Alexander Lane founded the Harlem Institute of Fashion. And just to take our minds back into that space, you had the civil rights movement sort of in its waning days. You had the Black Power movement gaining popularity. How do you think that social and political climate influenced the mission of HIF? And we can start with you, Cedric. Not since you're the oldest on the panel, but you know.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I'd like to say that when Miss Alexander brought it to my attention that we were in the forefront of fashion, because we had been designing since the fig leaf, and we were there throughout every aspect of fashion, we knew that our place in fashion was supposed to be, let's say, brought to the attention of the world, which it was in a quiet manner. And in the civil rights time, I had a chance to begin my fashion experience with a show called Naturally 1962. And I modeled in that show red, black, and green dashiki to capture that image of that social struggle, if you will, and have a chance to promenade in the light of fashion in a way that our people were intended to show who we were.
And I think that's a great point, because I think what you're getting at is that she didn't wait for permission. She said, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna create a platform for my people with my own money if I have to, and we're not gonna wait for the quote unquote mainstream to accept or to co-opt us. Did anybody else wanna chime in on that climate and the mission, or?
Think of it.
Tuesday, you wanted to, no?
No, I just feel like I'm sure it was a dream of hers before she even started it. I'm sure it was a passion of hers, and it probably during that time it was harder to start a nonprofit, you know, and get funding, get adequate funding to really see, you know, her dream unfold. But the reality is she did it.
She did it.
She did it. And, you know, that's the exciting part of it. And by the time the fashion shows became a core piece to the institution, by the late 70s, she was up and running, you know.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And so we're gonna fast forward from 1966 to 1979. And so as you mentioned, she begins producing the fashion shows for Harlem Week. And then also that's when the Black Fashion Museum launches and opens. And so Cedric, you were there from the very beginning.
Close to the beginning.
Close, exactly, right, like 80, 81, right? So close to the beginning, but can you tell us what was it like getting those fashion shows for Harlem Week off the ground and running? What was that process?
When I met Miss Alexander, I had produced a show at City College at the City University of New York, and it was called Harlem, the Story Untold. So we were focused in on how the community and fashion was connected. So I was introduced to the Black Fashion Museum Harlem Institute of Fashion by Vivian Robinson, founder of the Delco, who saw that me and my plight at City College had a connection to Miss Alexander's role in fashion. So she invited me to come to a Harlem Institute of Fashion board meeting where I was welcome. And as a designer of shows, as a stylist, as a performer of stage, it fit right into me because Miss Alexander was a woman who had a vision that everybody around her, they knew that she was right on point with it, and they knew that she was someone who was going to carry it from one point to the other. So it began as a program where my group from City College opened Harlem Week 1981, okay? With a scene that we created called the subway scene, and we had the 7 Deadly Sins of Fashion who walked in that show. So when Miss Alexander saw my direction, she said, well, come along. And, you know, I was like, wow, I'm accepted, you know. by a person who knew exactly what she wanted, and I was a part of it. So our organization met, which was called City's Dream, met with the Harlem Week audience for the first time, and we presented our choreographed sketches in the state office building, Harlem State Office Building, Plaza. And the Harlem audience who knows staging, who knows fashion, gave us the go-ahead. And right after that, Miss Alexander took me under her wing, and I became a part of the Black Fashion Museum modeling mannequins, I call it. You know, the Black Fashion Mannequins began, and Tuesday here was a part of it, and she just tore the show up, and more than hundreds of models would come to audition for our shows.
Well, I just want to put into perspective, because you're talking about the shows like it was just one show, but let's let the audience know. So Harlem Week, which actually, you know, it started as a week or a day, and then it extended into like multiple weeks, months, right? A month. The shows that you all were producing were about 6 to 7 productions, right? You had 135th Street, right? You had the block party in front of HIF and BFM. You had where else? Grant's Tomb.
Right.
You had Uptown Goes Downtown City Hall. You had a pop-up exhibition at Gracie Mansion.
Gracie Mansion, yes.
Was there another? Am I missing?
Uptown Saturday night in front of the state office building.
There you go. So this was a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Right? That you all were doing.
And a seniors show.
And a senior show. Oh my God.
That included seniors who were of Miss Alexander's
Age.
entourage.
Yes. This was all inclusive.
A nose for clothes.
Yes. So I just want to put that into perspective for the audience, because this is a lot of work. So it took a large team. So it was Miss Alexander, there was a committee of multiple people who were involved in this to make it come alive. And there was as you mentioned, Cedric, the theatrical production, which made people stop and stare in awe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were several key people involved. We had George Saunders.
Yes.
We had Sylvia Berthina White. We had Gladys James, and all of them played a key role in not only managing the models, but managing the designers, managing the show, the run of the show. It was a huge effort, and it went on for
About how many
several
people would you
weeks.
estimate was involved, from models to designers to administrators, for about over 100, right?
I would say each show had at least 90 to 100 models.
Wow.
And the auditions would include somewhere in 150 models.
Wow.
And they would just rain in every year.
Yeah, an audition would be a general, our version of a cattle call, you know, where everyone would find out about the auditions and come in all ages. One of the joys of the experience was the fact that it was intergenerational, right?
Yeah.
So we had young models all the way to, like Cedric said, seniors, you know.
Different sizes.
And different sizes, different shapes, and
It was inclusive before it was trendy, as it is
Exactly.
today.
inclusive. Yeah.
And Carolyn, I want to ask you, so we heard about what the cattle call process was like for the models. What was it like as a designer? Because I know designers had to kind of audition in a way, present your stuff.
And we did.
Yeah, what was your experience like that, getting involved with HIF?
Well, my experience, I had to come in, I was invited in by a friend of Mrs. Alexander. And I would come in and I would bring my garment, my hats, I was doing accessories. And they would have to look at the inside, because the inside had to look just as good as the outside. And that was part of the process.
Can you say that again for the newbie designers, the what?
The inside of the garment had to look just as good as the outside.
There you go, thank you.
It had to be a situation where it can be sold in the store or marketed. And that meant that you had to have the perfect stitching, what was being used at that time, you know. And then the other process, there were people coming from all over that wanted to be a part of the show. And if you were accepted, it was like you got validation from Miss Alexander and the committee, you know.
And I heard Miss Alexander was a little bit of a tough cookie.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Let me tell you, right, to Carolyn's point, even though the models were all sizes and shapes and ages. We had different levels of experience. It was inclusive. However, there was still a standard. There was still a standard that we were held at, and it was nothing for Lois to see if a designer put a model in something that did
wasn't
not fit
appropriate.
right, did not fall right, because you know, while we're slender, we're still shapely.
We got some
right?
bumps and things.
It was nothing for Lois to say, "What is that? Go take that off." I can't tell you how many years she looked at me and go, "Tuesday, who put that on you? Go take that off."
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so she really had a standard, and she saw everything that was going on
Very
during the
observant.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing about how we came together as a group of models with varying degrees of experience, we had rehearsals.
Yes.
And those rehearsals, if you didn't know how to walk the runway, by the time we finished the first rehearsal, you were better than you were when you came in. And everybody would pitch in. You would see little caches of models training other models so that they could wear the garment that the designers were bringing in. And then the staff of Miss Berthina White or Miss Gladys James would have their eye on different people to wear and match Carolyn's clothes with one of the models, or this designer Mashoud and some of the Bose pieces. They would really know exactly who could carry the pieces. And we had a very good time making sure that we hit the stage properly.
And speaking of that good time, when folks come and see the exhibition in person, you'll see the images, the archival materials. Oh, Tuesday, a mic for you. Cool. You'll see in the archival materials the crowds that were gathered at these fashion shows. So there were people on the streets, 135th Street, in front of the state office building on 125th and ACP, large thousands.
Yes.
What was that like for each of you to see your own community come out in those droves and numbers for fashion?
It was fascinating. It felt like Christmas when you were getting ready for the show. The anticipation felt like Christmas or Easter, because now we're going on a platform that was built for us in the middle of Harlem on our 7th Avenue, because we were on 7th Avenue also, you know, so it was a great feeling. And then also put us on the map. You know, it put our name out there as far as promotions and letting people know what we were doing.
Exactly.
They knew what they came out for.
Yeah.
And the Harlem Week fashion shows were the closing of Harlem Day. They would wait for hours for us to perform. And through all of the troubling moments in the preparation for the shows, there were so many different things going on in Harlem that when you waited for that fashion show, you knew you were going to see clothes, and the people in the audience knew that it better be right. Because we were held to that standard, that once we hit the stage, after they've waited that long, they've gone through all of the bands, all of the singers, all of the announcements, but when the fashion show hit the stage, we featured some of the best fashions in the country. And people will come from all over the country and the world with their sketch pads.
That's right.
Okay?
Oh, really?
To sketch what they felt that would be the next thing coming up next season from Harlem Week shows.
You might have had a few big name designers coming in with their sketch pads stealing ideas, right?
You know, they would send their crew.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
So yeah, just an amazing moment, amazing time. Like when you see those photos, it's like, wow, I just love what you all did. So we talked a little bit about this, about the inclusivity that the shows presented with people of all ages, sizes, colors. Did y'all realize then the sort of ground you were breaking? Or has it come to you to realize that now? And how do you put that into perspective? Because it's really breaking ground.
Yeah.
Presenting.
I knew it then.
Yeah.
I knew it at the time when I became involved with the organization, because I was always on a hunt for who we are and our place in fashion. And when I stumbled across the Harlem Institute of Fashion, I couldn't wait. It was closed that evening, and I couldn't wait to get back the next day to meet Mrs. Alexander. And when I did that, I'm looking at this woman. She's fascinating. She's gracious. she's shrewd, and she's observant. And we talked for a while, and she told me about the programs and the book.
Blacks in the History of Fashion, self-published.
Exactly. When I found out, that was my Bible for fashion.
Yeah.
When I found out about that book, and it had everything that I was looking for, because I knew we had our place in fashion, but no one wanted us to know that. You know, and so from that point, I was sold. I was home.
What was it like for you? Did you realize then, Tuesday, what you were doing?
I don't think so. I didn't realize at the time. For me, it was more of a homecoming. Like every year, we looked, even though I'm in New York the whole year, but we looked forward to that time, that Harlem Week time, you know, typically in the month of August, right?
Yeah.
Did it cross July to August? So, and just to see everybody and be with family, and that's what it was. And the leadership in the museum, you know, like I said, they were our mentors. They were our aunts, our mothers, our grandmothers. And so I felt like I was coming home every, you know, summer to be with my family. And that was the designers and the models and, you know, the Black Fashion Museum family. So I did not realize, you know, we were actually making history.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to say, growing up in Harlem and into fashion, you know, we always had a feeling that we knew what the fashion game was about. You know, so when we joined the Harlem Week fashion shows, we came there with a feeling of we knew how to dress, we knew how to change, and you know, some of the things that we learned on our own fit in with this Harlem Week experience, you see? So a lot of the people that came to the shows would already know what they were about to see because they were versed in the art of fashion. They knew what was going to happen if you turned wrong, if you posed wrong. You know, they were right there. And a lot of times you would find people in the audience that would tell you, do this, do that, do the other, because they knew what they wanted to see and they know we could bring it. And that's what we did.
And you got to remember, we came from a place where we were in the garment district as seamstress, the peacemakers, piece sewers, but they didn't want to give us that title as designers. So now we're here and we're being called designers. That was big for us.
Definitely.
That was big, you know.
It was like, yes, take this title and own it.
Yes,
I love
exactly.
it.
Because that was the secret.
And everyone needs that. You know, even when you're just starting out, you need someone to pour into you, give you that confidence, and it's wonderful that HIF did that.
Yes.
And one of the ways that it did that, I'm gonna go to you, Calvin, because you were a student at some of the classes. So HIF, in addition to the fashion shows, had classes where you could learn, you know, dressmaking, even computer technology classes, and they had workforce development as well to help place people into jobs, as you mentioned. So what was it like being a student at HIF?
It just amplified what I was doing and what I was feeling and what I was searching for. And I took a class with Patricia Wellington. She was teaching a millinery class. It was a basic millinery class, so they taught us how to do the patterns and how to actually make like 5 different berets. And it was a great class, it really was. But knowing that it was in Harlem, was right here, you know, all this time, I'm like, it's amazing. And I don't hesitate to put it on my resume, you know, because a lot of people like, where did you go? Where was that? I'm like, yeah, that was in Harlem. And I'm proud to say that I was a part of it, you know, so that goes on my resume first.
Right next to FIT, right?
Before.
Before, okay, all right, HIF then FIT.
Before.
But yeah, I think that's so important, as you mentioned. And, you know, Tuesday, you brought this up earlier, and I want to really hone in on this point, the intergenerational factor, right? So just to, again, put into perspective, Miss Alexander was in her 70s or 80s around the time you all joined, and you were in your 20s or 30s. I don't want to, you know, say, but you know, you were younger. So talk to me about, like, how did it feel to have that intergenerational dialogue and connection?
Yeah, it was, that's what made it feel like family, right? Because you had every position in a family makeup was there, you know, from the young people that were there who we had to work with, during the shows, to our peers. It's like our siblings, right? And yes, we were in our early to mid 20s. and then, Lois and Sylvia and George, they were basically our elders. But they knew so much and taught us so much, about the industry too. And it was an opportunity for us as models to really learn to appreciate designers, right? Because, a lot of times, models were, if they were pursuing it professionally, they were probably pursuing it more in a mainstream way, right? It wasn't Black designers. But this gave us the opportunity to get to know, our people, our designers.
And vice versa.
And appreciate them. Yeah, so, and so the fact that it went across all ages was just amazing. And
Like that you learned from them, and I'm sure that they learned from each of you just as much, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Cedric said, accepted. You felt so accepted. It wasn't like older people, telling us what to do. They were bringing us in. They were nurturing us, and they were teaching us. So it was a much different.
Made sure we got the message
Yeah.
and passed the message on.
Yeah.
Which is so important. It's something that we, need to continue. And I think it does happen, that intergenerational, but we need to continue to reinforce it and do it even more, because there's so much we can learn from each other.
And it was very comfortable. I remember even Sylvia Berthelina White, I was close to her as well. And I remained friends with her even after I stopped doing the shows. She actually had me join the National Association of Media Women, like one of the other organizations that she was involved with. She was still my mother, grandma, mentor. And so these were true relationships, that we forged with them.
And they were models before they met us.
Yeah.
They were actually high fashion models.
Exactly.
And they knew clothes. And Miss Alexander would buy garments from the designers. So, she was an avid collector of fashion. She would, if she saw your pieces, she would buy it. And one of her statements was, buy a woman a dress, she has one. Teach her to sew, she has many.
Love it.
So.
Love it. And I heard you chiming in, Carolyn. It was like, yes, she supported us. How did that feel? Because I think so often when we talk about inclusivity and all this stuff, that's wonderful. We need it, but we also need financial support. We need the dollars. We need, you got to buy, you got to support. How did that feel to have someone like that, of her stature, support you that early in your career financially as a professional?
It was fascinating just to know that, like I said, she had 3 organizations and a book. This woman had courage, and she was ahead of her time, actually. So for her to be behind us, and she helped a bunch of, she would she was firm with us. This is what you need to do to be in this industry. And she wanted us to stick to it and be serious about what we were doing. As far as the designers and the models, we were all very close. There was no animosity. We were all supporting each other.
I know, like when I was doing my research, no one had anything negative to say about any interaction with anybody. I was like, this cannot be real. Where's the tea?
Yeah, we supported each other.
I love it.
Yes, we supported and promoted each other all the way through. Every designer, every model.
We all loved one another.
I still do.
If you had anything that you did not like, you had to stand before Mother Alexander.
Oh, yes.
And she will tell you, go stand in line and walk.
So
Put up or shut up.
So I want to get to, just to put into perspective, as I mentioned earlier, so, Lois did face some financial challenges in sustaining the organization because she wasn't getting she got some grants, but she wasn't getting the dollars that wider organizations were getting or anything like that. So she did have to come out of pocket to do a lot of the shows and the classes and all of that.
Yes.
So Cedric, as an administrator with HIF, who ended up, in the last few years running it as an executive, how did those financial challenges impact HIF's ability to sustain itself?
It was stressful, but you could not see it because Miss Alexander was so dedicated to what her plight was. Like when I was there, I had to produce something to help. And every time she would tell me, well, I can't pay you, but I can definitely say that you will gain an experience here. So I was there when the National Endowment of the Arts would give her money, contingent upon a flight of stairs being remodeled so that the people could go up the stairs. But she had to wait for that money. Then there was the sale of the concessions that we had, the books, the Pride magazine, the tote bags,
The gift shop, right?
the T-shirts, and the buttons, and all of these things. But it was up to the tours, and I was director of tours for a moment. That was my first job, And I was teaching the modeling, grooming, and charm class. So the influx of students helped. The donation from the Museum of Modern Art helped. And the people's contributions to the shows, like the tickets, helped, and the donors. Now, you mentioned Miss Berthina White. Funding, these ladies, like, they would say, well, how much do we need? And they would contribute these funds, you see? And I went to Miss Alexander one time, and I said, well, I have an idea. So I came up with, how do I present this to her? And she was always open to my discussion. But this time I said, well, I want to do a television show. And I said, well, how can I explain this to her so that she will back me? So I created a little statement, and it goes something like this. The Fashion Museum TV Theater will demonstrate a posture, design, and style of light, which will thread the needle through the fabric of fashion and mend an age-old pattern of thought with a stitch to hem the lining on the fashion historical runway. When this lady had a need for funds, Mr. Lane, she looked at Mr. Lane, and Mr. Lane opened the book, started writing, and all of a sudden I hear in the air a tear. And it was a check so that we could start our television show, which is on still till this day. Yep. And we have more than 1,000 cable casts up until this point.
Amazing. And I think with what you said, it really just puts into perspective how, with the challenges, how you all responded creatively to them. And it also highlights the need to continue supporting organizations that are doing the good work, right?
Yeah.
And, another challenge was, Lois's declining health, right? So that was a major factor that led to the closing in 1996 of HIF, and when they moved to DC. Her daughter, Joyce Bailey, took her there to care for her. So for each of you, what do you think might have been done differently where the organization might have been able to sustain itself even after the passing of Miss Alexander?
Yeah, I only wish her daughter had, more support that was probably needed at the time, even to move it to DC. But I'd like to think if there was leadership, executive leadership, and perhaps a board in place, at the time that could hire people to carry on the museum here, that would have been amazing. But like a lot of us as business owners, we're so passionate about what we do, and we keep it closely held, and that's whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit. It's our baby, so it's hard to sometimes expand it and allow other people to participate in the decision making. So I'm thinking that might have been part of it. Not leadership in place to say, okay, let's work on getting some more grants, some more funding, let's hire an executive director, and keep this afloat. Yeah.
Cedric, did you want to chime in? Was there anything you think could have been
I
done
haven't
differently?
let go yet of that experience. That's why I'm here tonight. The television show is one that, you have so many people that are interested in fashion, models, designers. And when you know that you had a diamond in the rough that was constantly being carved out of a piece of coal, and you are constantly looking for that diamond, you make sure that, I made sure that I kept it going as best as I could, and when you have a structure or a foundation that is in place and you need the support of the community, which is what she fought for. And even when they did not help, she still carried on. And it was as if they were helping her with millions of dollars, because she would always come to the various programs in the community. She would always do the block party and fashion festival and block party. She would always make sure that these things went on. So nobody was there. And in the future is something that is on my mind, to revisit the fashion festival and block party, meaning block off 126th Street and keep that memory going.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify, like with that question, I want to be sensitive because her daughter Joyce Bailey has done a tremendous job of keeping the legacy alive and making sure that the materials, the bulk of the collection from the Black Fashion Museum is in the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And the Schomburg has many items about HIF as well. So I just want to clarify that she did, I believe she did the best she could. And this was more to the point of, just learning what can we learn from organizations like this so that we can sustain them even longer, because I certainly, as a, from my generation, a millennial, right? I never heard of this until recently, and so had it been around, it would have been a great resource
and
for this generation.
I know that Miss Alexander will be proud to know that her garments, her collection of garments, made it to the Smithsonian Institution.
Yes.
As a way to say, well, my work was not done in vain.
Right.
It's carried on. And I would say she's definitely happy about that.
So I just want to share a few quick facts, and I am going to read them from my phone because it's a lot. So just a few facts about where we are today when it comes to Black people in fashion. So according to New York Magazine's The Cut 2018 article, less than 10% of the 146 fashion designers who showed at the major fall 2018 shows for Fashion Week in New York were Black, and only 15 of the 495 Council of Fashion Designers of America members are Black. And then in a New York Times article recently, and I'm gonna probably butcher the pronunciation, the Palais Galleria, the Paris Fashion Museum, they have 200,000 fashion items in the collection, but guess how many are by Black designers? Wanna guess?
Well,
I heard two in the audience. A little more than two.
About 7.
7, add another 7. So only 77 of the 200,000 pieces in their collection, and this is one of the premier, fashion museums, are by Black designers. So that's about 0.04%. Dismal numbers, unacceptable. And then when you think about, where we are today, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement, we're pushing for inclusivity and representation in all of these spaces. But what I love that HIF did was it created its own space, right? And I just want to ask you, for each of you, how do you think the legacy can serve as a model for us to continue pushing for social justice in the fashion industry?
Well, right now, we're her legacy. And so for us to continue on in everything that we do now and in the future, it's a representation of what we learned from her and what she had going on, and if we still stay intact and be a part of it and make it happen, it'll go further and more people will be involved and try to keep it going, because we need that, I'm not surprised of any of that. We want to be in a place where we don't have to ask other people for money. It's enough of us to get together and pool money together so that we can put people on our 7th Avenue, that we can build our own show to that level. And we can do it.
We can.
We need an organization that will help us put that in place.
Yeah, I think people when they come and see the exhibit, they will be inspired, knowing that this was done before and it can absolutely be done again. So I think that those who are, passionate about the fashion industry, especially designers, there's a model out there for it. So a model in terms of supporting designers, not a model to model. But it's been done. So there's something for them to reflect on, and it can be done again.
And shout out to the organizations that are around, especially in Harlem, Harlem's Fashion Row, Harlem Fashion Week, HarlemParade.org, So Harlem, that are doing that and continuing that, and so many others. So, support these organizations and spaces like the Schomburg that keep the history alive.
Yes.
So we're gonna transition. So before we go to our mini fashion show, we are going to screen an amazing new media work. This is the debut by interdisciplinary artist Diane Smith, who was a former HIF model, and she has created a piece remixing, reimagining archival one-way video footage from Tuesday's collection that was shot by Curran Devonish. So please enjoy The House of Lois K. Alexander Lane.
Okay, you want to stay there?
It really does. When you accentuate what is your positive, at least that's what you think it is. But we did see an excessive amount of that, and it's primarily because I would say 99 and 9/10% of them do not wear girdles, which is most unfortunate. Because if you shape like jelly, you need a girdle. Some museum clothes. There have been times when I've used practically all museum. But after this experience, I never do it except in rare occasions, like, what was it? On Wednesday? What day was that? Friday. That young man, he's for the benefit of the designers whose clothes you are wearing. Try to the best of your ability. Doing that, you know something is shaky. And I in the show. By and large, it was a tremendous show.
You a story that you will never forget. It's not a true story, but not everything in it is false. We bring to you the African spirit of Bashu Ofari Ogun, the features of the face, the bone and the vibration thereof, as we climb the stairway of fashion and give you the advice, but it's up to you to take it. It's Bashu Ofari Ogun. The African mask is worn by our mom. Forever, Inez Robinson in a Bashu Ofari Ogun. The face, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and the tribal scars are significant of his Lagos, Nigerian birthplace. We bring to you our model, up close and personal, Miss Inez Robinson. Mashoud Ofari Ogun, the African spirit, the eyes, the nose, and the lips that kiss you goodbye. We move right along and down the line and tell you a story that you will never forget. Yes, he is decked out in what is known as bows, nose buttons, and he takes it off to unveil the tail and the trail that leads a row of buttons down and through the vast vistas of yesterday and today and tomorrow. The Speedo pen, the Speedo moves in the direction of love and affection as we carry on and give you the advice, but it's up to you to take it. Metallic buttons, wooden buttons, metal buttons from Bo McCall. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the 6.5, maybe 7 foot tray of the do-rag is where we give you the advice, and it's up to you to take it. We move from there into another direction of fashion in the spiritual sense of it all. From the Black Fashion Museum, we bring you her name is Queen Bilquis.
Queen Bilquis. Spiritual wear.
Spiritual wear by Queen Bilquis, ladies and gentlemen. And the color is definitely flowing.
Spiritual wear.
Into your mind's lining with perfect timing. She is spiritually connected to the essence of perfection as she carries on the train of success and showing very little of the skin and covering the very particulars of all that comes about. She takes that train and slings it to the west, and she moves into the direction of perfection. Ladies and gentlemen, our model Phyllis.
Spiritual wear.
I am. She is a model at birth. Spontaneous and unrehearsed. You get to see her as she strolls down the Nile Valley. When Bilquis made this statement, she wanted you to know that it was royalty in her. And her royalty is expressed in red, as it is said, piped in gold, glitters with the crown of a queen, as we dash through the vast vistas of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Our model, Phyllis Spencer, with all of the impact of a pro, brings to you Queen Bilquis.
Spiritual wear.
Spiritual wear. Ladies and gentlemen, Thank you.
Spiritual
And thank you very kindly. We have just given you that mannequin feeling. Our model Inez and Mashudo Fario Goon. Our model Hopeton G. Fisherman. And he's going fishing, ladies and gentlemen. In the Bo McCall Speedo, the bracelet, the hat, and here she is, last but not least, fanning her way and planning the day with us on this occasion, showing out at the Schomburg.
Queen Bell Keys. Spiritual wear.
Spiritual wear. Mashudo Fario Goon, Bo McCall, and Solio. Yes, sir, you got to show us this fashion so that I could attempt to bring it to
Queen Bell Keys. Spiritual wear.
Thank you so much, Cedric. Before we let these models go, I would love for you and Solio to just tell us a little bit about each of the designers that we see here.
And where's my camera? Over here? All right, so this is Mashoud. He has a location in Brooklyn, so definitely go to his store on Fulton Street and support his amazing designs. He's dressed Stevie Wonder, he's dressed Raven Simone, so many others, really beautiful work, and it celebrates African culture. As Cedric said, the tribal scars, AKA scarification, references, that history of that. So he's really just an amazing designer. We have Hopeton and Bo McCall, buttons, hand sewn. I'm also wearing a new piece by Bo McCall. Looks like I have on pants, but it's a dress. So these are wonderful. You think of, just the buttons as a keepsake within our families and how he remixes this everyday material into fascinating wear. And then we have the fabulous Queen Bell Keys, AKA Cynthia Harmon Designs, which really, you think about modest fashion, which is so trendy today. She was doing this back then, really to celebrate her faith in Islam as a Black Muslim woman, but still wanting to wear something that it was extravaganza for the runway. So this really celebrates faith and Black culture. And yeah, give it up for our designers. And so, was there something? Oh, good. Okay, so with that said, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you come and see the pop-up exhibition, which is on view until September 16th. Go to the Schomburg's website for more information. You don't need a ticket. Just come in during open hours and check out the exhibition. Thank you to everyone here. Good night.